Welcome back, folks, to another Millennium Bowling Supply video ball review. Chase Valenzuela here with the all-new Roto Grip RST X3. I'm going to try to start a little closer to the track here. The RST X3 from Roto Grip does feature that RST core we've seen in the RST X1 and the RST X2, so it's not been modified at all. It's an RG of 2.53, a differential of 0.053, and an intermediate differential of 0.16. The cover on this one is Microtrax Hybrid. It does appear to be a 2 parts pearl, 1 part solid hybrid. Microtrax, for those of you that don't know, is the E-Trax base that Roto Grip has made very popular on a lot of really good bowling balls over the years, with a nano-based additive. And in my observation over the couple of balls that I've drilled that have that nano additive in them, nano to me reads as more teeth in the cover stock. So it makes the cover stock a little earlier, a little more relentlessly continuous, a little diggier. So the RST X3 so far looks pretty good on top of the friction. So from there, we'll gradually move in and get our hand around it a little more and see how it looks going left to right. And tug that one pretty good. Right off the bat, this formula to me pretty obviously pearl heavy. It does get really far down the lane before it makes its move, but it is smoother than a lot of other pearl balls that we have in the catalog. Better shot there. This one pretty shiny out of the box. We actually have this next to our Idol Cosmos on the wall in the pro shop. And I had a customer confused the other day that one was a pearl and one was a hybrid, but the hybrid appeared shinier. So traditionally, I've been a fan of the nano additive covers. I really liked the IQ Tour Nano Pearl. And that was one that I threw a bunch. I actually had a couple of 300s with it while it was out. It was out for a fairly brief time. You see, this ball is really responsive to friction. You get it to the dirt a little quick and it really responds off of it. It's not just jerky and unpredictable, but it does make a big move on the back part of the lane. We're gonna move in a little bit more on this shot here. Still able to get it up the hill. So I was a big fan of the RST X1, which was also a hybrid, but it was actually solid heavy. So it was a little earlier, a little smoother. The RST X1 for me was the biggest ball in my bag when I did have it. I don't typically like the gigantic balls. I can't throw them very often, so the RST X1 was great because it was slightly cleaner and slightly weaker than stuff like the Proton Physics or the Reality, and I could actually use them on easier stuff that wasn't dead flooded but was too slick for me to throw cleaner covers. Comparison balls coming up today are the RST X2 and the Roto Grip Rubicon UC-2. The X2 is one that I've had some success with in league and also out of town. I would say it's just as clean, but not quite as smooth off the back. The X2 makes a little bit bigger move and is a little bit sharper. I'll put one more kind of in that same area. So we kept that one in a little bit there on that last shot, and you see it didn't quite get there and get the 10 out. It was a little bit late and behind the head pin. This cleaner, smoother cover, coupled with the higher RG of this RST core, give the ball really, really easy length, and I can't really miss into the oil when they're this fresh, but I can get it to the right and count on it to come back. I see the RST X1 fitting in my bag because of how smooth it is and how responsive it is to friction. I'll be able to throw it when they're hooking a lot and be a little bit closer to that friction. And if they're slick, I'll be able to really straighten up and count on it to be smooth and predictable, but still get through the front part of the lane. The RST X3 is available August 19th. Go to your local pro shop and pre-order yours today, or come see me at Millennium Bowling Supply to pre-order yours, or come see me after release date to pick one up. Make another little move left here. I don't see this getting back just because they're not developed hardly at all. And able to hit the pocket, but just too far down the lane, leaving that weak 10 pin. So off of that 10 pin, I'm gonna actually move my feet a little left, try to get the ball to the right sooner and see if it'll square up. And still behind the head pin with that weak 10. So once again, this cover really clean for a hybrid. Kind of gives me like UFO alert. That ball for me was really clean, but also really smooth. The difference is the RG value. That UFO core has a lower RG value. So the UFO alert wanted the mid lane just a little bit more. This one floats through the fronts and the mids quite a bit more. So the initial transition here typically is carry down. I think I'm starting to see a little bit of that now. So I'm just gonna back off the speed a little bit and see if I can get it to come around the corner and not get too far down the lane like it has the last couple of times. So we like to see that. You know, there's some balls that kind of do what you tell them, meaning if you slow it down the hook earlier, if you hit it more or roll it more, you know, you get a particular reaction or response from that ball. Then there's balls that kind of do the same thing every time, regardless of what small change or adjustment you try to make. For me, the Trend 2 is the first one I think of that kind of has that built-in shape that you can't do much to change. The Trend 2 for me was great on a house shot and in league because I don't have to think about it. I don't have to make it do the exact right thing. It was just going to do what it did pretty consistently. But if it went away, I couldn't really make it work. So if I started 10 pinning or it started going really early, there wasn't a huge way that I could adjust and change that ball reaction. The RST X3, very much like the RST X1, seems to be the other way, where it does what I tell it a little bit. You see I softened up a little bit and was able to get it to strike where I couldn't get the 10 out before. Tugged that one big there. It's the nice thing about the cleaner shell like that is if you do miss into the oil enough that you're not going to flat 10, you'll probably hold the pocket. So for me, this is something that I don't mind seeing because I don't care to shoot a couple of 10 pins in a game if my pocket is really, really big. So if I have a lot of room to hit the pocket, but a couple of my misses are going to 10 pin, I can live with that because with that much room to hit the pocket, I feel like I can still put up a big score. So liking what I'm seeing so far. It's just a little bit cleaner, quicker RST X1. It really fits in between the X1 and the X2 for me. I don't currently have an X1. I threw the absolute mess out of mine and I ended up killing it, throwing it away. So I have an X2 still. We're actually going to go ahead and get into that comparison here. So we'll try that X2 kind of in that same spot where I got lined up with the X1 and just see, or excuse me, with the X3 and see if we can see any sort of shape difference associated with that cover. So similar hook potential. I don't know that the X2 is earlier or smoother. It feels a little more continuous, a little less likely to make that hockey stick motion and go forward. You see the X2 floats, makes that big move, and then sets up. I'm sorry, that's the X3 that I just threw that does that. It kind of has these chopped up, it skids, it hooks, it rolls, and you can really identify each of those through the shot. Where the X2 for me is a little smoother in the transition that it makes from skid to hook to roll. I'll try to put one there. I missed the last one just a little bit inside with the X3. Yeah, the X2 might be a little less forward on the end of the pattern. And again, to me, that just sort of plays to which way I'd rather miss. I'll have a little bit of room to miss inside with the X3 and still get it to lay there and hold, where with the X2, I'd be better off missing out because it's going to continue really well off the back of the pattern. And I'm not going to get as much hold as I would get with the X3. So we're going to move in now at the RST X3, where it was struggling to get the pin out, and see how it stacks up to that RST X2, which seems to be a little bit more continuous. So the X3 late to get around the corner again. Not quite as blended on that shape. Makes that big hook and then goes forward. And we'll try to get in that same spot with the X2 here. And the X2 still late, but not quite as late. So what I'm going to do now is move my eyes one left from that same spot with the X3 and the X2 and see how it looks with a little bit straighter angles. Typically the stuff that makes that big hook and then goes forward instead of continuing off the back of the pattern really well, for me, is good to play straighter angles because it's not going to overread and overhook on the back. And really good there. So that's going to be kind of the niche for that RST X3. For me, I think, is trapping it, whether that's out, maybe around the track, or in, around fourth arrow like that. It's going to be using that 10 board as my break point rather than going around the lane too much and playing too much angle. I'm going to try to belly the X2 like that and keep it around 10 down the lane. We'll see what that looks like here. Yeah, so much more continuous off the back. Does not go as forward. And obviously the weight blocks are the exact same in these two bowling balls, so that is due entirely to the cover stock formula. All right, so we see how the X3 stacks up to the RST X2. So I'm going to move back right a little bit, kind of where we were lined up, and throw another one with the X3. We're going to see how it stacks up to the Rubicon UC-2. All right, now we'll try that same spot with the UC-2 here. The X2 really good there. Probably a pinch earlier. I'm sorry, the UC-2 really good there. The UC-2 is probably a pinch earlier than the RST X2 for me, and not quite as quick or continuous down the lane. A little bit smoother. So do one more kind of one-to-one comparison there with the X3 and the UC-2, and then we'll try that spot a little bit further left as well. Got that one in a little bit, but in is the way to play that ball. So we'll try to get this UC-2 kind of in that same belly spot too, where it's not quite as far right down the lane. So one more here, just trying to keep it in a little bit. And and just like the X2 sort of overread the back of the pattern. So once again, the X2 and the UC-2 for me don't necessarily demand huge angles, but I absolutely can't trap them and shut the angles down with any success, at least traditionally. They let me play big angles when I need to. I think the X3 is one of few bowling balls in my bag that is going to be trappable and let me keep my angles straight, because it does go a little bit forward on the back of the pattern. I'm going to make that move left here. And you see a little late getting into the hook phase there. Again, that was not really keeping the ball in. That's sort of a line that I would usually play here at Millennium, with something that's a little more angular, a little more continuous. I have a feeling the UC-2 is going to make it from in here. So a little right and still able to get there with the UC-2. And of course we are going to try to give it a look at those straighter angles as well through the middle. So I'm going to cheat my eyes one left here. Keep the ball around 10 down the lane. And got that one inside and still really, really close. And now we'll try the UC-2 in that same spot. And that one a little further right down the lane than the shot with the X3 that 4-pinned. So I'll try to leave you with a couple of good shots here with the RST X3. We'll wrap up out here and take it to the pro shop. So there you have it, folks, my first look at the RST X3 from Roto. This ball features that new Microtrax hybrid formula. So if you're looking for an RST X1 replacement, I would say this is not it. The X1 for me read as 2 parts solid, 1 part pearl, where this one is exactly the opposite. It's 2 parts pearl, 1 part solid on that hybrid formula. So this one you're going to get a little more length and a little more pop. But that solid that's added in there, that 1/3 solid in that cover stock formula, is going to really keep the ball tame and smooth compared to some of the other pearl balls that we have on the market. So compared to the RST X2, I had this one a pinch earlier, but a whole lot smoother on the back of the pattern. So if you have an X2 but you find that it gets a little bit too angular, I think this would be a really good complement. As you saw for me, the RST X3 wasn't really the best on the fresh because of that sort of smooth pearl shape that I got out of it. It wasn't quick enough for me to open my angles up and throw it to the friction, but it was a little too much for me to really go right and play straight because of how much that cover still wants to hook and read the friction. So the RST X3 release date on this thing, August 19th. Go to your local pro shop or come see me at Millennium Bowling Supply to pick yours up on release day or pre-order it now.